August 4th, 2015, the Mormon Church released photographs of one of Joseph Smith's seer stones.
As everyone is aware, in the historical Mormon culture, Joseph Smith is accused of engaging in ceremonial or folk magic and conning members of his community by bogus treasure seeking using this seer stone by placing it in a hat, putting his head in the hat, and then saying he could see where buried treasure. Well, that might sound quite fantastic, but there is a scientific basis behind it. Once again, one man's magic is another man's science.
Use of this stone placed Joseph Smith outside the mainstream of Christian practice and placed him in a culture that mixed occult magic with Christianity. But there were also frauds and con men, especially if they were being paid or compensated in some way. Since Joseph Smith admitted he was paid for his services as a treasure seer, it is wise to approach his use of this stone with some skepticism.
I shouldn't have to comment about how deceptive this statement by Mr. Dan Vogel is, since none of the neighbors ever stated they paid the Smiths any money to excavate on their land. That's exactly what they were doing. They were going into partnership with the landowner and engaging in excavation, which, if you want to apply Occam's razor or the simplest explanation to what they were doing, they were excavating for archaeological artifacts, which in fact they were successful because none of the neighbors ever complained. In fact, they were all quite happy with whatever results they were concealing from the general public by saying, oh, we're looking for buried treasure using magic, which they weren't. They were using good old-fashioned science. I'm going to show you how the seer stone, what is considered a photovoltaic battery, original photovoltaic battery. So when Joseph Smith's seer stone was revealed by the Utah Mormon Church, a reporter interviewed a geologist on the phone to determine what sort of stone Joseph Smith's seer stone was. The geologist on the phone was very excited because he revealed that this indeed was a very rare stone. It's known as an iron-banded jasper. This is a stone formed under such pressure that it forms an iron crystalline structure. As I will reveal, is an original organic form of a photovoltaic battery and is used indeed today in X-ray technology and solar technology for photovoltaic solar panels. I'm also going to reveal how indeed Joseph Smith was absolutely truthful when he said he put the stone in the hat, and as he walked across a terrain, sparks would light up in the hat. Well, that is excess photons being fluxed or induced by its interaction with the different mineral composites lying within the earth as Joseph Smith walked over them and used his organic form of a photovoltaic battery to release electrical currents, or what we call excess photons.
Testimony of neighbors locates Smith-inspired excavations in several hills on and to the east of their farm, as well as other places, and that Joseph Smith's practice included a form of ceremonial magic, such as the drawing of a magic circle on the ground around the supposed treasure, the driving in of a stake in the center and 12 others around the periphery.
Wrong again. Again, applying Occam's razor or the simplest explanation, what Joseph Smith was doing is exactly what every geologist does when they're trying to locate veins of silver or veins of water. They form a circular grid system as they mark closer and closer to the force as it increases as you grid inward toward the center.
In 1822, Joseph Smith Sr. told Peter Ingersoll, who lived immediately north of the Smith farm, that he could see treasures in a hill behind his house.
And indeed, Joseph Smith could, because he was using an organic form of a metal detector, or a photovoltaic battery, which would spark and induce electrical currents when he got closer to a mineral formation under the ground that had lower resistivity and higher conductivity than the crystalline iron of his jasper stone. which which I have referred to, is used in lithium batteries and photovoltaic batteries today. Or in the case of Josiah Stoll, an entire silver mine, which we have the agreements of the partnership between Josiah Stoll and the Smiths in their excavation of his silver mine that was located on his property. Just to remind you, I'm not a geologist or a scientist, but I do understand what I read. So I can look at certain articles like Einstein's photoelectric paper, which garnered him the Nobel Prize in Physics, and understand it completely. And by the way, it is rumored, and I do believe this rumor, that Einstein's wife actually authored the paper. This is why he gave her the Nobel Prize winnings when he got them, to make sure that she stayed mum. And that is not a conspiracy theory. That are theories that have been around for a long time. Look it up in Wikipedia. But I digress. So Joseph Smith's Seer stone has been revealed to be an iron-banded jasper stone, in which it's a couple of thousand-year-old stone. It's called a Genesis stone because it's a very rare stone that's found in the deeper parts of the Earth's crust. Well, because it has been molded and formed under such immense pressure, it has very special qualities which only pressure can produce. The iron bands are known as iron crystalline. So what is iron crystalline? A common term we know is that of pyrite, or which is called fool's gold. And here's a picture of fool's gold. Were produced under great immense pressure under plate tectonics. So what is the formation of a crystalline? Well, you know the crystalline is done in a matrix. Think of a wire mesh, and that's what this iron is going to look like in the stone. Well, what do they use pyrite for, and is considered to be a semiconductor material? Use it for, and a newer commercial use for pyrite is as a cathode material in Energizer brand non-rechargeable lithium batteries. What the stone that Joseph Smith found, but its special qualities are found in lithium type batteries. So what Joseph Smith had in his Seer stone, an organic form of a lithium battery. So what does a lithium battery do? Well, I'm going to show you. X-ray diffraction. So here's the refractive quality, and probably the refraction that Joseph Smith was seeing in the darkness of his hat as it interacted with the veins of silver in the silver mine he was helping a neighbor excavate. So the S atoms are tetrahedral. That is a tetrahedron, the tetragrammaton. That's the reference to God, the Yahweh crowd in the Bible. Tetrahedron is a four-sided pyramid. So three sides and a base, as opposed to the pyramids in Egypt, which are quadrahedral pyramids. They have four sides and a base. Okay, it transformed or transduced, which means it's stepping it down or stepping it up. Okay, so from a diametric pyrite into a ferromagnetic material, which can lead the applications of the device such as solar cells or magnetic data storage, leading one to the conclusion that Joseph Smith's Seer stone is what you call a photoelectric battery, an organic one, needed to fire against sparking. Okay, this leads me to believe one of the most adorable, endearing memory of Joseph Smith was when he was being misdemeanor case of disorderly conduct because he was helping people find treasure or their artifacts, Indian artifacts on their land, by the use of the seer stone. He told the court, when the court asked him, are you going to cease doing this activity of putting your stone in your hat and finding this, helping your neighbors find their artifacts? Joseph Smith said, well, yes, he'd come to a point where he was tired of doing this work, and also it was hurting his eyes, indicating that yes, indeed, the sparks or the photons falling off this photoelectric battery of sorts, his seer stone, was causing him to have sparks in his eyes. It's considered a flintstone of tinder, but interesting enough, it's used in photoelectric batteries such as solar batteries, or as we used up here, lithium batteries are now the main use for this pyrite structure, which is part of the iron-banded seer stone. So now I'm going to show you how the mechanism of the photoelectric effect that Joseph Smith was seeing as he was looking for the metal within his cave excavations, and why he was so popular with the neighbors, because he was successful and was able, had a gift. You do have to have a gift, and being young with younger eyes, you're going to see this photoelectric effect better than older eyes doing the same technique of putting the stone in the hat. So let's go through, and I'm going to show you its resistive and conductive quality versus the metal that we're looking for. So in my discussion of the iron-banded jasper or seer stone used by Joseph Smith by putting it in his hat, putting his face into it, and finding silver and gold as a result of the interactivity of the seer stone or the iron-banded jasper, which we know now is an organic form of a photovoltaic battery. All right, they are using it now. This crystalline iron structures are used in solar panels today. So we've got a battery which has energy stored. What this seer stone does when it's exposed to light is it is an absorber. It's absorbing energy during the day like a solar battery does. And then when you want to use it in the dark, it expends its energy. And we're going to see that it's the interaction with the gold and silver they are looking for, these ancient artifacts, which we know made Portugal and Spanish the most wealthy countries in the world during the 15th and 16th century, of finding all these treasures in the North American continent. Well, these treasures are still being sought after by the Europeans even as late as the 18th century, because now they're down to rare pickings. They're scouring the hillsides, and this is what Joseph Smith's family was doing, selling these artifacts into New York and using them in their educational investigations at Dartmouth College, which were primary sources of the ancient language curriculum by John Smith, the great uncle to Joseph and Hiram Smith, and the uncle to their father. So it's not like, if we apply Occam's razor and the most simplest, obvious explanation of these excavations in which no neighbor complained, in which no neighbor paid the Smiths, only partnered with them, then we have the simplest explanation is that they were excavating for actual artifacts, archaeological artifacts, and they were having success. And this is the reason why they were having success with this seer stone, which is shrouded in so much mystery. As I said, one man's magic is another man's science. One man's treasure digging is a Smith's archaeological excavations and using the organic technology known as the dowsing rod, electromagnetic induction, and the seer stone, which also has electrical qualities of resistivity and conductivity. So let's go down and see what the resistive qualities of silver and gold is, and you're going to see the differences and why they are interacting. Here's some conductivity. I used to be able to recognize these very quickly. We've got resistivity with the particle, and you're going to have the wave versus the point divided by the area of the point. So anyway, the resistivity is proportional to the length, but inversely proportional to the cross-sectional area. So in other words, the particle it's going to be this inverse proportion, which all of the universe is governed by this law of inverse proportion. So let's go on down. This is why this is just so crazy. They try and make science so mysterious, and it's not. And so you're going to have joules, which is the photon effect and produces energy when you cross it with one. When you have a particle divided by one, that means you're splitting it off. The electron's going one way, the photons going another, and you've got energy because this is the flux. This is the conductivity. All right, so we've got a joule this way. It's producing a flux, and then an electron is going the other way. And they have them done in tensors. I used to be very good at this. But you can see how, okay, here's the mean line, and as the electron splits off, it becomes darker, the darker side of the electron, and then out of this electron configuration, or the particle, is emerging the photon. And this is what Joseph Smith saw in his hat when he interacted the seer stone with the metal that he was looking for. I love this. I love physics, okay? For some reason I have a facility for it. Let's go on down here. Okay, here's this resistive quality, and I think this is what's very interesting. So we have silver's resistivity, which means low resistivity, high conductivity. Silver has the highest conductive quality. In other words, it produces the least resistance. So this means that whatever electron is trying to find a home base, it's going to go down and transpose down to the silver. Copper, we use copper wires. It has the least resistance to the electrons. So it's going to be putting those electrons out there. And then when it hits its resistance, it's going to blow out the photons. So, okay, copper is next in line for least resistive, high conductivity. Okay, let's go on down here to lithium, which is what we're looking for right now, which is pyrite. See if they've got one for pyrite. Let me see. They don't. Let's just go down here to lithium, which is what pyrite is, a lithium battery. Okay, so it's got a fairly, you would say, a mid-range of resistivity and conductivity. So versus 1.59, you're going to have lithium, or the pyrite, or the jasper at 9.28. Let's see, its conductivity is low. Okay, but it's considered a mid-range. And as we said, it is a battery, a lithium solar battery. It's holding energy within its iron mesh crystallines. So what Joseph Smith would do is put this organic jasper in his hat, put his head in his hat, and then he would walk a piece of property. And as he walked the piece of property, the closer he got to, say, a vein of silver, okay, this lithium right here is going to be searching for a lower resistive quality. Once they hit the silver, that's going to start sparking. The reason why it's going to start sparking is because the electrons are going to flow into the silver that it is interacting with. And the silver is going to pull out those electrons. It doesn't really pull it out. Lithium is actually just searching for a lower resistive quality to set those little electrons free. Okay, so the electrons will be running into the silver, but in order to run out the electrons, they must tear loose of the photon. So as the electrons are searching for the silver, or running downward, transducing into silver, it's shedding photons. So it would start sparking. The closer Joseph Smith got to gold, copper, or silver, lower quality, lower resistivity, he'd start seeing sparking in his hat. He would start seeing it light up with photons. Simple explanation. One man's technology is another man's magic. Very simple concept. I love investigating mysteries like this. But it just goes to show you it doesn't do any good to assume the most negative connotation to something when the obvious Occam's razor, the simplest explanation, is always the best. They said they're looking for gold and silver, which in fact they were. They were excavating. It wasn't treasure digging. I showed you the mine. They were excavating. I mean, with picks and axes going 12 feet into a mountain, 6 feet high. That would take weeks. They obviously were pulling quite a bit of artifacts and valuables out of that excavation. And then they didn't fill it in, they actually put a door over it. So the fact that none of the neighbors complained, no one ever exchanged money except for we have that partnership agreement of the silver mine of Josiah Stoll, who sought out Joseph Smith. Well, why would you seek out Joseph Smith's services if he wasn't well known to be successful, contrary to what Mormon scholars claim, which they believe everything they read in the most negative light possible. Oh, all the neighbors said, no, we didn't find anything. Oh, why would we have found anything? We just allowed the excavation to go on for weeks and weeks. And in fact, they said they had statements from 51 neighbors who observed the vast excavation projects that the Smiths were engaged in. I mean, 51 neighbors watched on as they watched. This wasn't treasure digging, this was archaeological excavations hidden under the mystery of magic and spirits to keep away intruders, all right? This is what is done today. You saw in that video about the dowsing sticks. They're still called witching rods, all right? Because that was the mystery the dowser would use to protect his trade secrets. Yes, the Smiths were using their trade secrets and keeping them safe by using this voodoo language of magic. Again, one man's magic is another man's science. One man's treasure digging is another man's archaeology.